City of Stevens Point Finance Committee meeting, recorded February 12, 2024.
.648, I'll call a meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Corey, please take roll.
Okay, Carrie, were you going to
Carrie?
do roll?
I can if you want me to.
Okay.
Sure.
Christensen,
Here.
Morrow,
Aye.
Shore,
Here.
Broderick. Who are we missing?
I think we've,
I don't know, I didn't bring my list.
Nope. Broderick and then.
I'm not logged on yet.
Chairman, are we missing somebody? We got 5 committee members. 1, 2, 3, 4. Who are we missing?
Hello.
Only have 5.
Hello.
Oh, Shuda.
Shuda.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Hello.
Sorry, we forgot about you.
Thank you.
And shoot out.
Apologies. All right. Shuda's here.
Okay.
Dead yet. Not dead yet.
All right. On our agenda this evening, our first item after roll call is the approval of a capital reallocation and additional funding for repairs to the Willett Arena, an update on the overall Gerke-Willett Community Stadium project. Dr. Kramer.
Thank you. I appreciate the time here tonight. I've got co-chair of the project, Tim Sherrill, with me. We just want to start by saying we're excited to be here. So 2 years ago, we came with kind of a promise and a vision, and we're back tonight with a couple things we want to talk through and ask approval on, but we also really want to celebrate the entire community coming together for the largest project in Stevens Point history. We actually have representatives from the schools here as well that have been with us in lockstep since this project began. April 11th will mark 2 years. We'll cut a ribbon on the actual team room and the massive improvements that we've already been playing with in terms of the exterior improvements with the field. And there's been a lot of success in terms of the support all around, from private businesses to youth groups to not-for-profits, as well as the school districts that are seeing a benefit from it. In addition, you're seeing a tremendous amount of momentum from athletics in the city, from the university side to the high school side to the youth sports. Tremendous amount of success coming from the pride they're taking in the facility, and a lot of tremendous results that are coming from it too. So I also want to just add, I would guess if we added up the number of hours that we've probably had in this project over the last really 3 years that we've been working on it, we probably couldn't even put on a spreadsheet, just the number of businesses, boardrooms. Tim's been with me for almost every one of those meetings, so big thank you to him as well as the athletic directors that have been big voices and advocates for this project as we've kind of sold it start to finish. We're going to try to rep through.
I think there's some weeks there that you see me more than your wife.
Yeah. Don't tell her that, yeah. We're going to try to rep through this as quick as we can, so certainly we could spend a lot more time than we're going to, but we're sensitive to it. There's obviously some other big things on the agenda tonight. So first slide is up front. Our ask tonight is for authorization up to $150,000 additional. That's just due to we tore into a 1980s structure, and when we got into some of these things, we discovered a few elements that existing drawings from 1980 as well as new building codes, there's just some things that didn't gel, and we did as best we could out of the gate to cover almost all of it. And there's a couple things that in contrast to the overall project budget, we consider them minimal, but there's still a lot of money. So we're certainly here tonight to ask for approval. We don't believe we're going to need it all, but we didn't want to be back or have to hit the pause button in another month or two asking for $5,000 more or $10,000 more. So we're asking for this number up front, just letting you know we anticipate it to be less. In addition to that, we didn't want to come tonight and tell you about the existing building without telling you about the press box. We mentioned this in our vision, and we're committed to finishing it, but we also want to let you know we do have an asset in the roof on the building that has been leaking that we want to show it to you at the end of this presentation as well. Yeah, and the rotten siding. Additionally, though, we're coming with a problem. We're coming with solutions. So luckily, because of a competitive bidding environment, next week we are going to be asking for approval to award the Groholski Park project, and that's come in around $100,000 under budget. So we're trying to come with a minimal ask and shifting some of the dollars within the park system to try to make this ask a little less as well. Mr. Mayor, go on. The first pictures, again, going quickly, is just the things that are outlined in your memo. So the memo talks about the narrative of it, but we wanted to show you some of it if you weren't able to take a tour. This is some of the material, next slide, Mayor, that is applied to the deck, the metal roofing deck of the building that is potentially flammable. So luckily for our building inspectors, when they came through, they give us great advice, tell us the things that we should account for. This was flagged and told that we need to cover it with a flame-resistant or flame-retardant material that won't allow it to combust. So this was a change order we did not anticipate until we took the ceiling grid out of the office. Next slide. Additionally, our project builds a new building that's just attached to the old building. So they're not it's not just busting out the wall and building on. We actually built a standalone structure, and we tied it in with essentially a hallway. So if you look at this, we now have a flame-resistant 90-minute door here. However, if you look at the base of this wall, we believed in the original plans it was concrete all the way to the ceiling. It was not. So when we had it inspected, we essentially were told we need to block that in all the way to the roof deck to allow that fire barrier for up to 2 hours within the building code. There's several other building code components that are too complicated to really explain. But the short version is another change order that came in before we get occupancy is making sure the top of this wall that was drawn to be black but was actually wood frame is going to be black when it's done. Next slide. The other thing is the existing wall condition. So we'll show you pictures of the new facade of the building, which looks brand new and really nice. We anticipated, and the council back in April of 22 allowed us to fund recladding the east and south side. Next slide, Mayor. The existing wall actually has some issues at the bottom of the wall in which it's letting moisture come up underneath it when it rains heavy. It's due to when it was constructed, the moisture barrier that was installed doesn't meet today's code. It was before some of the code elements of it. Additionally, this was a tin shed essentially, and then we drywalled a bunch of things inside of it as the building took on and evolved over the last 40 years. This is an exposed portion of that wall that's in the stairwell. You really can't see the rest of the wall without cutting drywall out. So the best way I can phrase this is if you were looking at your house, you'll see a stud that runs every 16 to 24 inches on center. Here with a metal building, you can see the metal bars or poles that run across the top, and then you can see one in the far corner. There's sometimes 10 and 12 foot runs that you don't have a support stud. So the new facade that would attach to this metal, this was not designed essentially to have that weight on the exterior, but it's much cheaper to do the new facade than to tear all of the old walls out and build new. So when we found the moisture issue and started cutting into the walls, the best fix here to shorten it is to cut the bottom of the wall out about 6 to 8 inches high. We'll reinforce it with new metal. Then a vapor barrier that meets today's code will get installed, and we'll put new structure and support along the wall. Then the brand new facade can go on. This is really the reason we're here tonight, in addition to the helical piles that drove most of the costs that we ran into. Next slide. So porous soils is something that we discovered early on in the project, and we actually absorbed the cost, an $80,000 change order, within our fundraising efforts. Initial soil boring showed that we had about a 20-foot helical pile depth that we had to drive to hit supporting soils to basically withstand the weight of the building. We have 100 helical piles underneath that building to support it. We discovered during construction we actually had to go to 40 plus feet, which drove a large number, $80,000, a change order. Again, our fundraising efforts covered it, but we had to do it. It was the first thing out of the ground, literally to get out of the ground, and this basement really paves the way for the future.
Right, so one of the things, I'll be honest with you, I built.
Tim, could you please move?
Sorry. No, I've been part of Team Sherrill Companies, one of the co-owners. I've probably built 10, 15 buildings, commercial buildings in this community. So I've had a lot of experience. I didn't even know what a helical pylon was when they brought it up. And I've never seen this anywhere in Stevens Point before. But the only thing we can think of is that when this was a fairground, they used to put the manure there. And the soil got so soft, we had to go down 40 feet with over 100 different pylons to be able to support building the basement. And we felt very, very strongly that when we got into this, we ended up spending $435,000 extra on putting that basement in. It's 2,900 square feet. And we also plumbed it for showers and additional bathrooms. And the reason we think that that was so important is because, and the numbers show it, is that the use has just gone up like crazy. And right now we're projecting in 2024 to over 200,000 eyeballs or users in the entire complex, and we're just going to need more locker rooms in the future. So it was the right thing to do, but it got expensive. So it was $435,000 plus the $80,000. So it was an additional $500,000 we absorbed that we really didn't have to spend if we wouldn't have put the basement in. But I think the basement was definitely the right long-term decision for the city's benefit.
Next slide, Mayor. So really here, another big component of this that we'll just barely touch on is reciprocity. First reciprocity agreement in our history from the Parks Department as well as with the user groups. This was really negotiated by Tim and the project partners, and I'll just let you cover these. This slide and the next one, Mayor, just show the tremendous facility that the university put together.
This is a brand new facility. It was completed, Brad, when was it completed? Just October. So the reciprocity agreement, I coach youth football, youth sports in this town for 17 years, and I can tell you it's hard to find places to practice in the spring when all the ground is wet. The reciprocity agreement basically says anybody that's been was a donor or part of this project, which is the school systems, all 3 school systems are involved, there's multiple clubs involved, have reciprocity to use these free of charge if and when the university's not using it, then the K through 12, anybody else in the school system can use it, and they can use reverse. The university can use community stadium as well. So it's the first time that's ever happened, and we were able to secure a 15-year agreement with all these agreements. It guarantees the city $3 million of income over the next 15 years, of which before this they had no guarantees of any.
Excellent. So the rest is going to be highlight videos of what we accomplished. This is the field we started with. So this was a major upgrade in 2008, and we got a tremendous amount of life out of it. But you can see the center line, or the 50-yard line logo was out of date. Next slide. This is what this project delivered. This is what the field looks like today. Next slide. This field also has a padding underneath it to make it safer on concussions, ankle injuries, knee injuries. Really, it's a state-of-the-art field for this time based on new technology that's come out since 2008. Next slide. This is a really cool picture that just shows SPASH sold-out crowd. You can see the video board in the background, as well as the inflatable mascot. Next slide. You can see the project delivered basically a full goalpost-sized entrance tunnel for all the teams to run through, and this is what one looks like when it's set up. That was also incorporated. Next slide.
One for each school.
Yeah, one for each school. So Pacelli, EWSP, and SPASH has one. This is the Schroll Company, Schroll family, pledged for the video board. This is higher resolution than Lambeau Field, just due to when we purchased it. Nicest one in the conference. There's a new sound system, as well as a video camera system that does instant replay and live video during the games. There's actually school classes. SPASH did some really unique things, so did EWSP, during the games with students that are actually operating some of this equipment. The south scoreboard, if you saw it before the project, I dug for the photos, I didn't have one, was difficult to look at. The Mendyke family stepped up in a big way here too, made a large contribution. We were able to rebrand this and make it consistent with the stadium. This is the medical gator, the transport gator that'll take players and athletes basically from the field of play back to the medical room. This was donated with another large gift from Aspirus and branded for them. Next slide.
Sure.
The restrooms in the stadium, while it sometimes seems like a small thing, thousands of people enter our restrooms. They were the same for the last 35 plus years. Next slide. They have a new epoxy floor, completely remodeled, new partitions, new mirrors, new fixtures, all done as part of this project. The next photo shows what the old locker rooms look like, and one of the crux of this project was securing the UWSP Pointer Women's Program to come to the KB Willett and for that 15-year agreement so we can make all the other pieces work. Next slide. With the university's help, walking side by side, we delivered that locker room. Next photo. Next photo. They branded it. And you can go to the next one. You can see now it's got the full build out for the UWSP Pointer Women. This is their dedicated space. By creating the new team room up at the grade, which you'll see later, it opened this space up to be converted. Next slide. With accessible toilets and shower facilities for them. Keep going. Next one. And now you'll see just the exterior where it sits today. Here's the recladding up close that you'll see that we're looking to put on the existing walls. But before we put it up, we have to correct those wall issues. Keep going.
And the same stuff we'd be looking at for the press box.
Yep, and then initially we'll show you the press box a little later. This is from up top of the press box, just looking down. Again, that facade will carry down the rest of that wall once we fix the structural and water issues. Next slide. Here is just a depiction of where you'll see an Aspirus logo that'll go above the right garage door. That is the medical trainer's room. So it'll be the first dedicated space, which will show you that we'll have trainers' tables, and they'll not have to be on a dirt floor or underneath the actual bleachers. And that room will double for both inside the KB Willett and for outside for the football field. The left garage door is going to be storage. Next slide.
Did you bring a picture of the underneath of the Gerke Stadium, the original stuff?
I don't think you want to see that.
That's
picture.
impactful.
Dirt floor.
Other things we tried to address was ADA compliance. So this is the main registration counter that you come into when you come to the KB Willett Arena. The old counter was not at an accessible height. It was very small. We did break out that wall. We're going to lower the counter. It'll be fully ADA compliant when it's done. Next slide. We house up to 5 staff out of the office at the Willett, when between full-timers and the seasonal management that helps us run operations at kind of the changeover between that 2 and 4 p.m. window going into evening activities. So we added on to the office since we were doing the rest of the structure. Next slide. This is where you can kind of see the ceiling grid that got taken out that exposed the existing roof. But we did add that square foot space on so that you have a front counter to take the money and collect it, and the rest of the workspace for people to work inside that office. Next slide.
Windows.
Yeah, there's 2 major windows in that office too that opened up quite a bit of bright light. You used to not be able to see much out of that office at all. This is the main team room and community meeting space. So all of our donors and pledgers will be able to use that space when it's not being used for athletics. But this, if you look out the windows, you can see the football field. There's also a door that connects right into the ice arena, so it can double for both facilities. This really was the start of the vision, and this is the main element it's going to start getting used once we get occupancy. Next slide. This is the interior of the medical room, so this will get built out with trainers' tables and ice machines and other things. You can see the sink against the wall, the floor drain. First time we've actually had a dedicated medical space that's completely large enough to house all those facilities. Next slide. This is the basement. What we did here is you can see it's completely open and rough plumbed, so we can basically add some walls and plumb that out with showers and toilets without having to bust concrete. We've already had 3 or 4 inquiries about what we're going to do with this space, and we're not even done. So to further Tim's point that he mentioned earlier, it really was the time to do it. You can't tear that building out to put a basement in, so we're really glad we did it, and there's already lots of thoughts going into what could happen in the future. This is the new entrance vestibule. So it used to be one single bank of doors. When you open the door, all the warm air would come from the outside to the inside. So part of the project, if you recall, was adding the second bank of doors. We used to also have the letters fall off the KB Willett all the time. So it would say, the K Willett, or you'd be missing the L's. This is a new sign out front that'll have lights on it to give tribute to really the name of the facility as well as the main address and signage for the building. Lots of componentry. We did want to close and just let you know this is what the existing press box looks like. Mayor, can you go back 1? This is what the press box was shown to look like. So that recladding is what we're looking to do. And in order to do the recladding, we have to remove the rotten siding and replace the roof. If you want to go down 2, Mayor.
Well, the rubber roof and the underdecking. That's the problem.
Yep, so this is the rubber roof itself, and it's soft. You can ask any of the coaches that have walked up here just from the years and years of leaking since 1981. We need to peel that off. You can see the rotting siding that's there as well because the roof membrane tucks up underneath that. So to do it correctly, that all needs to be removed. Any of the soft wood that we believe is rotting underneath needs to be replaced. If you go down to the next photo, you'll see the water damage that's been happening in the Chancellor's box. I think Athletic Director Duckworth can tell you about the struggles and financial impacts they've had with having to patch that every year after we patch the exterior. So last slide, Mayor. So tonight, what we're saying is we've done a tremendous amount with a ton of support. This project has raised a significant amount of money. Obviously, the city has been a huge partner in it and leading the way. But of the $5 million that's been fundraised for it, you can see the breakout in your memo. What we're asking for tonight is approval up to the 150. But we do want to make you aware that this summer we'll be submitting for the press box, and this project will completely conclude, aside from the press box, late this spring, early summer. We have been using the exterior facilities in the fall, like I said, but this spring we hope to have everything rolling for all the teams for track and field, soccer, lacrosse, and all the other amenities that we set out on the vision of 2 years ago. So with that,
The second ask will be in the 2025 budget.
Yep, so the 2025 capital budget is where we're asking for the press box funding. Tonight, we're looking for the $150,000 authorization for the actual existing, the south wall, the flammable materials inside the office, as well as the helical piles that we've covered. So if you look at your memo, it does show a larger dollar amount than we're requesting. That's because we've covered a number of these things already within our existing budget. We're just asking for up to in case we run into some other things as we finish out the project. So with that, we can answer questions, and we do have representatives from the schools if there's any questions of them too.
I'll move approval.
Okay.
Get a motion.
I want to say one more thing. Just, he didn't know I'm going to say this, but I've been 41 years in business. I've built over 50 commercial buildings. I've been part of building 50 commercial buildings, 75 apartments. This project would not be where it is without this guy. He is a rock star, man. I'm telling you, don't let him go, because I'd hire him.
Okay, a motion by Alder Shore for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Shuda. Okay, so we can open up discussion. First of all, any questions or comments from the committee?
I was just going to ask Mr. Sherrill or Director Kramer, because there is so much support, we've got representatives from all of the schools here. Maybe you'd want to introduce them or at least
Good idea.
acknowledge them. They took the time out to show their support.
Sure. So we have the athletic director for University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, Brad Duckworth. We have the athletic director and the head football coach from Pacelli, Wayne Sankey, and I apologize for forgetting Drew Nelson. And then we have the athletic director from SPASH and David Hauser.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for coming, gentlemen. Any other questions from the committee or comments?
The only comment I made is I think this is going to be a bigger money maker as years end up going by. As they already said, the use is just going up and up and up, and if you build it, they will come. I mean, especially if you have a facility of this quality. I think what they're asking for is just going to enhance what we already have.
I think also when you consider how much of this has been funded by the community, I think that what the city's getting for what the amount of money the city's put into it is absolutely phenomenal. So
If you, just the numbers on that are really quick, is that with $150,000 ask, and then what we're telling you that we think we're gonna need in 2025, the city's total on this thing would be $895,000 of a $5 million project, plus we have guaranteed $3 million of income into this city over the next 15 years. So that turns out that the city's total in on the $5 million is 17.9% of the project, and if you factor in the additional $3 million of guaranteed revenue, you're down to under 10% of the whole thing.
Yep. Okay, any other from the committee? Otherwise, let's open it up to the public. Any comments or questions from the public?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
if I
Mayor.
could, just one
Yeah,
more
absolutely.
final comment.
Absolutely.
First of all, I need to commend Mr. Sherrill and Director Kramer. Planning is something that comes natural in the city, right? Things that we're doing now will affect people a generation from now. It's critical as a community that we plan for those future projects. And this is a perfect example of dedicated planning. We had the concept, we talked about it, we got public input, we planned, we got this thing rolling, and then the community was getting on board with it, right? Good planning yields good results, and this is a perfect example of that. So thank you. I know it was a whole lot more than the two of you, not to diminish what you did, but I want to thank everybody that was involved in this project. We will have a state-of-the-art facility when this is done.
I think the amount of collaboration, the private-public collaboration, and also the amount of cooperation between the different different educational entities, I mean, it's outstanding. Would you like to come to the microphone, please?
Yeah, they just, on behalf of all of the athletic directors, I just wanted to say thank you to get us to this point. It's also important to note, as we talk about economic impact of this, the majority of our alumni stay in Portage and Marathon County, but are local and contribute to the tax base. So one of the things that is essential in our world is recruitment, and in a state that's full of high-level athletics, and the ability to step out here now and walk high, and it's not just athletes. You know, we're drawing opening night, Halloween night. We had 1,000 of our students here at Willett. We're selling out on a regular basis. Gerke is full most nights for all of our teams, including ours. So on behalf of all of us, I want to say thanks to Tim and to Dan and to all of you. That's a big commitment you've made, we've all made in the future of all of our athletic programs. So thank you for your consideration tonight and all the work that you guys have put in for us. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. I guess my one comment that I wanted to mention, I'm really pleased that you did go ahead with the basement part of the project, and I think that's right back to what the mayor was saying. There was a lot of planning that went into this, and it's not just a high-quality facility now, but it's also going to serve the needs of this community for a long time because of that forward thinking, so I applaud you.
And candidly, if we wouldn't have put the basement in, we wouldn't be here asking you for anything. We would have actually been under what we started. We would have done the whole thing. But that basement long term it was the right thing to do. It just was.
Absolutely. All right. Any other comments? Otherwise, a vote would be in order. All those in favor of appropriating that, make the recommendation to appropriate that additional amount in our next capital budget would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. And that passes unanimously.
Chair?
Yes.
Because it's money, don't we have to go by single vote? Or
Well, so let me just clarify this. I see the confused look on the treasurer's face too. We're not allocating capital money for next year.
I thought it was out of the 2025 budget.
No,
Okay.
they're telling you they're going to ask for some money next year.
Oh, gotcha. That's the confusion. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
The official ask is to reallocate the
Up to.
remaining amount from the Groholski Park project and up to total with the other funding mechanisms that Comptroller Latico mentioned, so we could get to 150 if we would need it.
Okay.
In the current budget, yes. That was
The current budget, and that was the intention of the motion.
Our
so
current
we'll
extras
clarify that.
were
Yep.
185,000. We're asking you for 150 of that,
Yep.
of which 100 was at a different project you're shifting.
Right.
The 325, we're telling you right now that
Will be
this thing
coming.
is it's rotten. It's
Yeah.
falling apart. So there's going to be a 325 ask for the 2025 capital budget, and we are done.
So the motion, your motion then was the 100 reallocation and then the additional 50?
Up to a total of
Up to a total of
150, with
150.
the understanding that the savings has been realized on the other
Okay.
project.
So that was the motion, so that's what we,
And Alder Broder, were you the second, but we're both on the,
Alder Schutter was, yeah.
she was, we're both on the Parks Commission, so we.
Excellent.
And we don't need a roll call on it, we can use it by voice vote? Okay.
Correct, yeah, because finance is advisory to council,
Right.
so at council, this will need a roll call vote.
Right.
But it'll probably be on the consent agenda, and we'll roll call that.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, and that takes us to the next item on our agenda.
You still got to vote.
We did. It was unanimous, didn't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the issue is to go back and clarify.
Okay.
We just
Oh, I
clarified
see.
what the
So
vote
we
was, yeah.
clarified after the vote
Right,
happened.
yes.
Gotcha, my fault.
Yes. So our next item on the agenda is the approval of a proposal from Ellers Incorporated for professional services related to the creation of tax incremental financing district number 14. Who would like to speak to this? Director Kanowski. Looks like he's excited.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So before you is a request to work with Ellers, which is the financial consultant we've used for a number of our TIF districts over the last several years. As folks might recall, we have been pursuing TIF district number 14, generally in the East Park Commerce Center area. And so with that, we do need to start engaging with them to get the TIF established and in place no later than October 1st. That's when there's some state law changes to TIF, and it's more advantageous for us to get those TIFs in place before that October 1st deadline. So the proposal from Ellers is in your agenda packet this evening. Staff does recommend approval as presented. More than happy to answer any other questions you folks might have.
Is there a motion?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll move approval, but I also have a question.
I second.
Okay, and there's a second, so we can begin discussion. Alder Shore.
If you would explain to us the issue with hitting or sealing on TIFs and how we're going to deal with that.
Yep. So the state of Wisconsin says only 12% of your equalized value can be located within tax increment finance districts. Currently, the city has 13.97% of our total equalized value in those TIF districts. Part of that is because we've had some pretty significant growth within our TIFs, most notably in number 5 with the construction of the Century Building, TIF number 9 that's in East Park Commerce Center, and the Portage County Business Park. Significant projects like the Skyward Building, Delta Dental, Lineage Logistics, AIG is a separate TIF, but in that general area. So what, at the direction of Finance and the Council, city staff did pursue an amendment to Chapter 66 of the Wisconsin state statutes that govern TIF districts. We actually had a testify on that about 2 weeks ago. It has passed the Senate committee, and that special legislation also passed, or will hopefully pass the Assembly committee tomorrow, and will go to the floor of those governing bodies at the state level later this month, and hopefully on the governor's desk shortly thereafter. But we feel really confident that it's headed in the right direction. We couldn't have done that, of course, without our elected officials, Representative Shanklin and Senator Teston, and then special thanks to Representative Krug out of the Rapids area, who also helped with that special special legislation.
I assume the argument is to not be a victim of our own success.
Correct. Yep. Another reason that we're pursuing this is, TIF District Number 9 is nearing the end of its expenditure period, and so in order for us to continue to have economic growth, especially in East Park over the next several years, it's pretty critical for us to have this TIF in place to encourage future growth in East Park Commerce Center.
Thanks. Thanks, Director. Any other questions or comments from the committee? From the public, do we have any questions, comments, thoughts? Okay. Hearing none, then we'll take the vote. All in favor of approval of that proposal for professional services for Millers Incorporated for District 14 would signify by saying aye.
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 Didn't hear Alder Schuler.
He did.
Yes, there's an aye.
Okay, thank you. And all opposed would be no. So that passes unanimously. Item number 4 on our agenda, a request to issue an RFP for demolition of the Shopko property at 1200 Main Street. Director.
Similar to what we've done in the past, we always issue RFPs for demolition work, and this is no different. This is really kind of the start of the redevelopment of the Shopko property block. The plan is phase 1 will include taking the Shopko building down, extension of Strong's Avenue up to Union Street, and then some utility work as we work through essentially creating developable building pads on that block for future development. So it doesn't make sense for us to keep the building. It's essentially mothballed right now. There's no water in the fire suppression system anymore. And so it's advantageous for us to take that property down. We are asking for the RFP to be issued.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Alder Morrow. Is there a second? Alder
Second.
Broderick has a second. Any other discussion?
Just a comment, because people have asked about it, why can't we do something else with the building? That building has been vacant for more than 3 years. Literally no one has come forward with a proposal to do anything else with that building, which is one of the reasons that the city bought it in the first place. Changed ownership twice during that time. Nobody had a reasonable proposal to do anything with that building. Now it's in such a state of disrepair. As Director Karnowski alluded to, we mothballed it. We shut off the electricity, you turn off the water, all of those things that cost money. It was about $5,000 a month in utilities to keep the lights on and that sort of thing. So since that Halloween store has been out, that was the only use. The pipes did actually burst, and everything that was in the fire suppression system, which, as you can imagine, was extensive, drained into the building. We are not seeking any repairs. What we are seeking is to do the right thing and demolish it so we can redevelop the area.
Thank you. Any other comments before we vote?
Sounds like we could have another ice rink.
Yeah. We
I
need
joked
colder-
about it, open the doors and you got an indoor skating rink.
Not when it's 45. Jeez. All right, all in favor of issuing that RFP for demolition for the Shopko property indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. That passes unanimously as well. Item number 5, request from the City of Stevens Point to acquire a portion lot numbers, it's in a whole lot of numbers, it's in your agenda, for purposes of a right-of-way extension for 3rd Street.
Fairly straightforward request. Currently, the city owns about 54-foot wide parcel. There's a need, and actually the ordinance that we operate under requires a minimum of 60-foot for right-of-way. If you look within the memorandum that was included in this agenda packet item, there is a long-term plan to extend 3rd Street through from 6th Avenue up to Maria Drive. Whenever we do road reconstruction projects, I know Director Badun's in the other room, we do work together to ensure that we're meeting the goals of our planning efforts of the city. And so this was one of those instances. There is essentially we had a willing seller, we were a willing buyer, and so the city did, staff did negotiate a deal to acquire that 6-foot right-of-way from the adjacent property owner for about $5,000. That will be paid for as part of the larger borrowing package for the Maria Drive project. Staff does recommend approval as presented, and that'll allow us to at least start putting in, southbound at the intersection, so that as we continue to develop 3rd Street North, that infrastructure will already be there ready to go.
Nice. Okay, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Alder Moore.
Second.
Second by Alder Schuta, or Alder Shore.
One of those
And
names.
one of those, yeah. Discussion.
Pretty straightforward.
It is pretty straightforward, and buying 6 feet in order to have a workable, usable piece of property for extending Third Street seems to make a lot of sense, so. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Any from the public? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed would be no, and that passes unanimously. That brings us down to our authorization to apply for an energy innovation grant from the Wisconsin Public Service Commission.
Thank
Adam
you.
Kuhn.
Thank you, Chair. So as members of the committee know, in 2008, I believe, the council adopted a long-term sustainability plan, Pathway to a Sustainable Stevens Point, which was a really helpful long-range planning document, really outlining goals that we as a community want to strive for as it relates to sustainability initiatives. One of the challenges from a staff level in terms of prioritizing what type of projects to pursue going forward is that we don't have a baseline as to what our greenhouse gas inventory is at this very moment to better prioritize what projects we can try to pursue going forward. So in conversations between Director Lemke and myself with the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition, the grant application request before you all is to apply for this Energy Innovation Grant in the amount of $175,000 to the Public Service Commission to do just that. Last thing I'll just note, unless there's any questions that commissioners have for me, is that there is no local match requirement. Completely, the funds would come from the Public Service Commission. So a pretty straightforward grant that would have some pretty big dividends for us in the future. So if there's any questions, happy to take them.
Alder Shore moves approval. Second. Alder Broderick. Okay, questions, comments from the committee?
Pretty straightforward.
Again, pretty straightforward, no.
We like grants.
We like grants, and especially when there's no local match even required. So in kind, there'll be a lot of work, and we will be putting time into it, so there'll be some in-kind contributions, but no financial contribution.
Correct.
Any questions or comments from the public? If not, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And opposed would be no. And that passes unanimously. That brings us down to number 7. Preliminary approval of a referendum to exceed levy limits for the purpose of hiring 9 additional firefighter paramedics. Chief. Thanks, sir. Thanks.
All right. Is there any way to make that a full presentation? Because I don't know if they'll be able to see some of it as we go through the slides.
Sure. Let me do this.
Thank you.
You don't have them timed, do you?
No.
Okay. This is the issue that we had earlier. As it comes up, the way you did it has the next slide available. Anybody know how to change this?
There should be an option to
There you go.
swap.
On there, it shows it's fine.
On the screen, yeah, it shows it's.
Oh, it does. Look at that.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right.
I always thought it was just a mirror of my screen. I didn't even bother looking up.
tab.
My fault.
Chief Moody.
Not a problem. All right, thank you. On behalf of the Stevens Point Fire Department, Local 484, and as chief of the department, I'd like to give this presentation on the potential to move forward with a referendum on the fall ballot, allowing the people of Stevens Point to decide on our request for additional funding. I've had many conversations with the comptroller and his office, the mayor, and the department heads of the city of Stevens Point. All are in agreement and in favor of supporting the Stevens Point Fire Department moving forward with this fall referendum. Also, the PFC, Police and Fire Commission, voted last week to support this referendum moving forward. The Stevens Point Fire Department continues to be involved in many different organizations, as you can see here. Leading by example, being the tip of the spear, being a department that others look to. Next slide. Through our core values and the price of doing business, when it comes to professionalism, respect, integrity, compassion, and excellence in all we do as firefighter paramedics for this city and the community we serve. But I'm afraid that moving forward, the mission statement of the Stevens Point Fire Department talks about what we do for our community through training, education, and risk reduction. And at this point, the Stevens Point Fire Department is at critical mass with right now its line staff and its line personnel and what we can provide. I don't believe moving forward that we're going to be able to provide this mission statement through our strategic planning and what our department feels is important to provide to our community members. Next slide. So what are we asking for? We're asking for funding, the funding to possibly create 9 additional line staff positions at the Stevens Point Fire Department. And that's critical. I want to be able to explain this. We are here in front of you this evening to explain that we are looking for the funding to move forward with this referendum. That's what this referendum is about, is the funding for potentially 9 positions. Next week, Common Council will vote on this. If approved to go to referendum in the fall, the community members will vote whether this is important to them or not. If they decide that this is important enough and they pass it, we will be back in December in front of the Police and Fire Commission, personnel, and the Common Council to then ask for those 9 positions. Why 9 positions, you may ask? Well, I'm going to show a little presentation as to why those 9 positions are critical. And don't take my word for it as the Stevens Point Fire Department chief. This is a presentation from the IAFF, the International Association of Firefighters, and why it's important that we have the proper staffing levels on our apparatuses.
You may have heard about NFPA 1710, the industry standard for career fire departments. But what is...
I think I got to reshare the screen. Hang on.
I think you have to get out of the PowerPoint and then go to YouTube.
Yeah, I just can't figure out how to do that yet. That's not going to do it. Stop sharing. There we go. Now, sorry, I apologize. This is a new thing for me. Share YouTube. Share. One.
Is it? And what does it mean for our community?
Anyone? We're still showing up this PowerPoint here. I'm sharing the PowerPoint. So let's try it again. Sorry. Thank you everyone for the patience. We are sharing YouTube video. Okay, that's the right one. Share. Alder Schuda, can you see the YouTube?
Yeah, I can see it. Yes, I can see it.
Why can't we see it here? All right, Chief, for now?
We're gonna...
No, I'm closing out the PowerPoint.
Okay.
I'm really trying to close out the PowerPoint.
Still closing out the PowerPoint?
Right. All right.
There we go.
Now everybody should be able to see it. Dean, can you still see it?
Yes, I see it fine.
NFPA 1710, the industry standard for career fire departments. But what is it? And what does it mean for our community? Your house is on fire. It's your worst nightmare. In just 3 minutes, a fire can grow 16 times larger than when it started, and it continues to grow bigger and faster every second. Once the clock starts ticking, there's a shrinking window of opportunity to save lives and property. You want a full crew of firefighters to put it out quickly, or you may suffer a catastrophic loss. But how many are enough? 15? 20?
So as you can see in this presentation, how many are enough? 15, 20, 40? The Stevens Point Fire Department currently has 13 personnel on each shift. So if we are fully staffed with max capacity, we have 13. But as you can see in this presentation, 15, 20, or 40. We don't even meet the minimum.
40? How do you decide? Fortunately, there's an internationally recognized industry standard. It's called NFPA 1710, and it's based on scientific evidence and research that establishes how many firefighters are needed to put out each fire and rescue anyone trapped. At a fire scene, you want a firefighter doing every job that needs to be done to save you and your house. And at a fire, there's a lot that needs to be done, like stretching the hose, hooking to a hydrant, searching for trapped people, venting the hot gases, and much more. For a low-hazard single-family house fire, NFPA 1710 specifies a minimum of 15 firefighters dispatched in the initial alarm.
We normally have a minimum of
An
10 on
airstrip shopping
duty.
center or garden apartment fire. The standard specifies a minimum of 28 firefighters dispatched in the first alarm. And for fires in high-rise buildings at least 7 stories tall, the data show that the initial dispatch should be for a minimum of 43 firefighters.
So it'll show you as the data begins to, the fires begin to increase. On a 7-story structure, if there's a working fire on the initial page, there should be 43 personnel paged to that fire. This fire occurred 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, at Briggs Street High Rise. Call came in the early morning, 3rd story, working structure fire. It was fully involved room. We not only had to put the fire out, we had to do search and rescue many people that were trapped within that building. And we responded with an initial page of 10 personnel.
And that fire department should send additional firefighters to situations that are beyond the capability of the initial alarm. When considering crew size on each engine and truck responding to a fire, the standard says that in low-hazard response areas
This is every residential area in the city of Stevens Point.
firefighters on each fire engine and truck is 4.
Minimum of 4.
With a high number of incidents or geographic
This is downtown
like
Main
narrow
Street.
roads, single-access bridges or islands. A minimum of 5 firefighters on
Minimum of 5
engine and
personnel
ladder truck
per
is
apparatus.
required. And in dense urban areas with high hazard occupancies like high-rise buildings, the minimum number of firefighters on each fire engine or truck is 6. Regardless of the type of property, 1710 also sets the time of arrival on scene within 4 minutes for the first engine with 4 firefighters. The 1710 standard for both response time and crew size is based on scientific evidence, not opinion. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, known as NIST, and its partners conducted extensive research to document the optimal crew sizes for various types of structures. As a decision maker, you and firefighters share a common goal. Everyone gets out alive. So when a house is on fire, just remember, it takes a minimum of 15 firefighters to put it out. And the responding crews should have the right number of firefighters on each engine and truck. The quicker the response time, the better the outcome for everyone. For more information,
thank you, Mayor.
Talk to your local firefighters. Thank.
So we talked about what the ask was, but how did we get here? There's been many options.
30 seconds, Chief.
30 seconds? Not a problem. I can wait 30 seconds. I'm holding in my hand a memo dated 2001 from the chief of the Stevens Point Fire Department at that time, Chief Barnes, to the mayor at that time, Mayor Westcott, asking for additional personnel to go from a minimum of 10 to 12. He also states in his memorandum that staffing levels hadn't changed since September 14th of 1981. For the past 20 years, they had stayed the same. He references NFPA 1710, which we just talked about, in the minimum of 4 people per apparatus. They also talk about OSHA and the 2 in, 2 out. They also talk about WISCOM and Department Safety. I can also tell you that every other chief since Chief Barnes has wrote this exact same memo requesting additional personnel per city policy 2.04. Yet the minimum staffing has not increased, and now we're at 43 years past 1981. We've also looked at writing SAFER grants. And we were really close at getting one 2 years ago, Corey, or was that 3 now?
I think probably 3.
3 years ago. But the problem that occurs after we get this SAFER grant, the funding is gone at the end of 3 years, and the city would have to pick up that financial dollar. The city can't afford to do that right now. And I'm not willing to, as the chief of this department, to write another SAFER grant, knowing that at the end of 3 years, we'd have to let those people go. That's not the type of leader I am. You want to talk about recruitment and retention, knowing that we're going to let our new entry-level firefighters go after 3 years? They don't want to come to Stevens Point. We've also looked at shared revenue. And lastly, and the only option on the table at this point, working with the comptroller's office, is to go to referendum for these additional positions. So we're looking for the funding. Next slide. Or more than just an ambulance or fire service. Yes, we provide EMS. Yes, we provide fire and fire investigations. But we also provide special operations, fire prevention. We went out and did 1,878 fire inspections this past year. We also do public education. Everybody knows October's Fire Prevention Month. Next slide. In the fall of 1981, September to be exact, the Stevens Point Fire Department added a tier of firefighters. That is the last time the city of Stevens Point added a tier of firefighters. 3 firefighters, 1 per crew, which allows the department to operate 1 extra position 24/7, 365. In 1982, they saw their first year of service and adding that tier. And in that year, the Stevens Point Fire Department responded to 1,988 calls for service. This last year, we responded to 5,538 calls for service, up over triple. Yet the city has not added a tier of firefighters since. This year alone, we are already up 53.33% in fire calls in the month of January. We're projected to have another 640 additional calls this year. Next slide. What is impacting the call volume? Well, since 1981, there's been 2,000 additional buildings built in the city of Stevens Point, residential, commercial, and industrial. We have an aging population, and the utilization for 911 is different than it was in the past. And as the chief of the Stevens Point Fire Department, I might have a little bit to do with that, and I might be a little bit to blame. But you see, one of the leadership styles that I am very big into, and what I feel is very important to the community, is that servant leadership style. We are here to serve the community. And with that, we have become transparent, and we have been out there more and more as a fire department. And as you can see, just in 2023 alone, we had an increase of almost 42% in calls for service calls alone. Service calls alone. Now, what is a service call? That may be to check on a smoke detector, a CO2 detector, carbon monoxide. We might be checking to install a bed rattling system. Some people now are hearing impaired and smoke detectors don't work. So my men and women are out installing bed shaker systems. They're out there helping with the ducts and the drains, and they're out there helping with a lot of other things. But when you look at the statistics, and you look at the Stevens Point Fire Department, last year we had 5,538 calls for service. We have 39 line personnel. That's 142 calls per person. Next slide, Mayor. Where do we compare with the rest? When we look at 142 calls per person for 39 line personnel, I didn't choose these cities. I didn't choose these departments. We just went through a city pay plan. The city looked at these cities as comparables. Baker Tilly's thought that this was appropriate. We use these departments then as comparables. Right now, we're at 142 calls per person on the line, the most out of all the departments you see up there. Even with this funding through a referendum, and if we do get the 9 positions, we drop to 115.4 calls per person. We would end up only second behind Wisconsin Rapids. And with that, people have always asked, well, then is 9 enough? My answer, no, 9 is not enough. But I also have to be fiscally responsible to the taxpayers. And I also have to worry about getting them the best possible service at the best possible price point. In 2023, firefighter availability. We had 4,071 ambulance calls for service. 24% of the time, 2 or more ambulances were out at the same time. After that, we end up at dangerous levels when we reduce our staffing to 6 or less. 24% of the time last year, we were at that point. Now, many have asked about getting into auto aid agreements with other departments. Hall, Plover, Rudolph. Also taking over areas like Park Ridge and belonging to Mavis, Mutual Aid Box Alarm Systems, and being aggressive with that. Mavis System and Division 110, which is Portage County. But I'm here to reassure all of you, of the 1,467 calls that we responded to last year, you can see where they were. They were downtown Stevens Point. They were right here in our community. 80.9% of the time. 1.1% of the time they were in Park Ridge. 2.1% of the time were with auto aid or mutual aid departments. In Car 5, we sent our lieutenant out to be a field supervisor 15.9% of the time. Now a 24-hour breakdown. The men and women of the Stevens Point Fire Department, they work a 24-hour shift. But the call volume is 15.2 calls for service per day. And the average time of a call is 51.03 minutes, which equals 12.9 hours. Now, I know I have to be realistic, and so do the men and women of the Stevens Point Fire Department. They're not going to get breakfast, lunch, and supper at their traditional times. But we do expect them to get a half hour to eat 3 times a day at some point. We also expect, and we talk about the standards when it comes to mental health and having that downtime when they come back from critical calls, to debrief, to talk to each other, to get through those stressful situations. As you can see, this is not uninterrupted time, this is interrupted time. But the standards say in a 24-hour day they should have 6 hours of interrupted time throughout that day to deal with the mental health and the stress and the fatigue. What does that leave? 3.6 hours in a day. 3.6 hours remaining in the day. To do what? Well, to do a minimum of 220 hours of fire training annually, to do 30 hours of EMS training, to do special operations training, to maintain the station, maintain the vehicles, do fire prevention, do fire inspections. Oh, by the way, 2.3 hours per day taken up just for fire prevention in those inspections. What does that leave us? Well, I'm here to tell you that it really only leaves 1.3 hours left in the day. To also be the confined space rescue standby team for the university, the mill, and everyone else. To make sure our members are all in charge of different programs and on different committees, making sure everything is running and moving forward. Next slide. But let's talk about the reality. After they've maintained all those things and done the training, these calls happen. 5,700 EM Cops Drive. It's a large facility. Anybody that doesn't know that, it's one of the largest cooling warehouses in the area. We had a working fire at that facility on the roof. Our units responded 100% staffed, plus our duty chief. When they got there, they suppressed the fire. They went to the roof. They did all their jobs. But at the same time, during that metro response with the Town Hall and the Village of Plover, there was another call for assistance on the northwest side of the city as a resident's home. We made a quick decision. We sent the duty chief who came in from home. We sent truck 1 with 2 people on it. Sent medic 2 with 2 people on it. And we sent Hall and Plover to assist. When they arrived, they had to team up because we didn't have enough personnel on our apparatuses to make an interior attack and suppress the fire that you see in front of you. We also had to take care of a victim who was overcome by smoke inhalation because they were still in the resident's home at the time. And one of our employees, because we were so short-staffed, ended up injured critically and ended up on a long-term work comp claim. Next slide. Now I handed out to all of you the talking points, the keys to this referendum. This is what I need you to take away. I'm asking for the ability to move forward to let the citizens decide at a fall referendum if we can have additional funding for potentially 9 positions. What is that going to cost? It's going to cost $41 per 100,000. For a median house of $194,000, it's going to cost the taxpayer $79. That's $3.04 per paycheck. I'd also like to point out that the city of Stevens Point has not added a tier of firefighters, being 3, since 1981, when the calls for service was 1,988, and last year we responded to 5,538. Fire runs were up 17% last year. EMS runs were up 11%. This year, They're already up 53.33%. Now, this is the most important bullet point. And why all the men and women of the Stevens Point Fire Department are here tonight. The mandatory overtime and the negative effects, the recruitment and the retention. We had 539 24-hour overtime shifts that the men and women answered the call to make sure we were meeting our minimums. 539 24-hour shifts. Normal factory that works an 8-hour shift, that's over 1,500 additional overtime shifts for the year. Of those 539, 93 were mandations. What is a mandation? They have the right to refuse the overtime. They have a right to refuse it the second time. When it comes around the third time, they are mandated to work. There is no option. They don't get to opt out. So if the employee was working Christmas Eve, they'll now be working Christmas Day, and they'll be working the 26th. They will work a 72-hour shift. They will not see their loved ones until the 27th. There's a potential to miss anniversaries, birthdays, and many other things. Now, as emergency services, when you get into this profession, that's a reality. We all know that, but not to this extent. Not to have 539 overtime days and 93 mandations. We've had members of the department leave. We are actually fully staffed for the first time since 2015. Almost a decade it's taken to become fully staffed again at the Stevens Point Fire Department. And some of those men and women have left because of what this has done to them and to their families. Through their exit interviews, they addressed the stress in these situations. But again, don't just take my word for it. NFPA, the presentation you all seen, 1710, says there should be a minimum of 4 or 5 personnel on each apparatus, depending on what type of apparatus that is. All we're asking to do with this referendum is to get our staffing levels to 3 on each one of our apparatuses. We're not even trying to make the minimum standards of 4 or 5. Right now, we are running 2 on Truck 22 out at Station 2, servicing the east side of the city. With that, I'd just like to ask, again, for your support as the Finance Committee, and as this moves forward, I'm asking for your support to be able to, at the Common Council next week, look for that as well. What are we looking for again? What is that ask? We're looking for the ability to go to a fall referendum for the funding to potentially create 9 new positions in the Stevens Point Fire Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. First, is there a motion to approve in order to start a discussion?
Motion.
Motion by Alder Morrow. Is there a second?
Second.
Alder Broderick seconds that. Committee, any questions, comments, thoughts?
I first want to say, Chief, that was a fabulously well-prepared, compelling, and informative presentation. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
I am fully in support of this. I think it's frankly a no-brainer. This is a safety issue both for the firefighter paramedics and the residents of Stevens Point. I hope the people of Stevens Point will agree in the fall.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the committee?
I also agree. I'm a current state employee. Our institutions were having the same problem. We would call being jammed at the institution where COs would have to work like 2-3 shifts in a row, and so the state couldn't keep anybody. And it wasn't until we were able to get the funding to bring on more and more staff that we didn't end up having the same issues. So this is way overdue.
Anyone else? I've had a chance to meet with the chief as well and shared a lot of this information previously. Very well done presentation, and I think the word compelling is very, very appropriate. I have a hard time imagining the community not getting behind this, and to me, it's a no-brainer. So, anyone from the public? Alder Kneebone.
Yeah, Mary Kneebone, District 7 Alder. A couple of years ago, I had to call 911. My spouse collapsed, went unconscious in the kitchen. And every minute that I waited for that ambulance to come down the street is an eternity. This is a no-brainer, as has already been mentioned. The things that the people in police and fire in this community are amazing. We ask more and more. Year after year, things change, things get more stressful. It's harder and harder to find people that want to do these jobs anymore, as Alder Morrow said. So every year we talk about the budgets. Every year we can only raise our taxes so much. Every year I'm concerned about people like me on a fixed income getting taxed out of my house. But for what I figure is about the cost of skipping a one McDonald's double pounder cheeseburger with fries a month gives me the kind of response to a 911 call that I expect. To me, it's worth every penny. So this is something I'm willing to raise my taxes for. It's just a whole, it's the right thing to do. It's absolutely the right thing to do. So I'm in support 100%.
I guess I would just kind of echo those same thoughts. I also had the need to call 911 for my mother-in-law a year and a half ago, and they were there in less than 4 minutes. And the quality of care, the job they do is absolutely unbelievable. We are so spoiled because we've been getting Cadillac service for probably Kia prices. This ask is still, I think, incredibly reasonable, and when you take into account the quality of service that we've been blessed to have, I think it's more than called for. So, anyone else? If not,
I'd like to ask something from the committee.
Okay, sure. Alder Lang.
I was taking notes, and I've watched the police and fire video too about this issue, and I was kind of wondering what would be right, because the takeaway is like, this is asking just in a way of like, we need something done, but what I hear is we need more. We need more than 9. We're not even going to get to the minimum with this. I would ask the Finance Committee to kind of do some work to find what is the right and what is the appropriate number for staffing in our fire department, because this is a safety issue. And if we're going to try to address it, I would ask that, we try and get it right.
Chief, do you want to respond to that?
I think this is the right thing to do, but is 9 the right number? And I understand it's a financial thing, and how much can we swallow as a community, but how much can we look into finding what is it 12? If 9 isn't enough, and that's what I hear from our chief, how do we go about finding that information out as like council members? What is the need?
I guess my one thought would be, even we've just became fully staffed for the first time. Finding 9 quality firefighters that would be, I mean, might be a challenge, but Chief, please address that.
That is going to be a challenge, but we're up to that challenge to find those 9 additional people come 2025 if the referendum were to go through and PFC personnel and the finance were to approve those 9 positions. I know the staff is up to that challenge. But to answer Alder Lang's question, how do we find that number out? That number is decided on through different studies, and we look at call volume, we look at both of the city, we look at the size of the city, we look at response times, we look at many things go into these studies when we try to figure out how many personnel are ideal. And we've done some of those studies in the past. There is one in the process right now as well. But what I will tell you is that not having added any personnel in 43 years, we definitely are behind. But to make that ask for what that actual number is, I don't think is realistic right now or is responsible of the fire department. We have to look at, again, where do we need to go now in order to at least be safe and to move the department forward? And this is where we need to be. Now, I know coming in front of all of you to ask for a referendum, this is not something I take lightly. The members of this department have not taken lightly. And we're not going to be back up here next year asking for more of those positions. We've done our homework, we've done our due diligence to say, what does it take to be able to make a tactical or operational attack on a fire, whether that's fire suppression, search and rescue when we come about that. What does it take to be able to come from across town in the proper amount of response time, meeting that 4-minute standard? What does it take? We've looked at all that. And right now, we're comfortable in saying we need those 9. Because asking for those 12 or 15, it's just not realistic, because we have to look at what else is involved. We have 2 fire stations right now. And if we ask for more personnel, we need more PPE. We need more seats in the fire apparatus. We might need another station right away. The 2 stations that we have may not be able to facilitate all of those positions. We have to look at all of those things and look at all of those costs now, which we did and we reevaluated, and 9 was the right number.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief. Any other comments or questions? If not, time for a vote. All of those in favor of moving forward with a referendum, approving a referendum for this upcoming fall election would signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed would be no. And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Approval of claims paid. Corey, any things you'd like to point out? Any highlights?
Yeah, so you'll notice the larger checks are for our tax settlement payments. So we collect payments for all of the taxing jurisdictions when you pay your tax bill, and then we forward the respective portions on for the county, the school district, and the tech college. So those were the big payments that we made for the month of January.
Firefighters, thank you for coming, and thank you for the job you guys do. Sorry, Corey, it just...
Oh, that's okay.
And the cost of the courthouse is in there, too.
Yes. Yep. That's a quarterly bill that we
Who said that? Did I say that?
Yeah. But yeah, for our share of 27% of the courthouse expenses.
$80 million.
So.
All right. Any, do any of these? We have a motion to approve by Alder Shore. Is there a second? Second by Alder Broderick. Any questions? Any other items that captured your interest that you'd like to ask Corey about? hopefully, if you do see those things, it's always good to call Corey ahead of time. He always can explain things, so.
Okay.
Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor of approval of claims paid, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, and opposed would be no. That takes us to our next item on the agenda, entering in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, parenth 1, parenth G, for conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who's rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, relating to the following: property tax exemption litigation with Marshfield Clinic Incorporated, 4100 State Highway 66. This is a roll call to go into close.
Move that we go in closed session.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Alder Shore and a second by Alder Morrow.
Christensen,
Aye.
Morrow,
Aye.
Shore,
Aye.
Shuda.
Looks like he dropped off.
Okay. Broderick.
Aye.
Okay, we are in closed session.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.